the story of a lovely lady who was bringing up three very lovely...
Hey, my name is Fred, and I just want to tell you about how I searched for and found the Brady Bunch house back in 1986. It's easy to find the address and location of the house nowadays via the internet, but back then it was a much more challenging proposition. A quick search on the internet will indicate that the house sits on Dilling Street in the very southeastern part of North Hollywood, considered a part of Studio City by some people nowadays. It's between the major streets of Tujunga and Vineland Avenues. I started looking for the house during my junior year at USC. During the afternoons between my studies, I would turn on the local Los Angeles television stations and watch the Brady Bunch episodes in syndication. There was one station that played 2 episodes back to back, and another station, I think on cable, that played 1 episode per afternoon. So really, each day, one could watch 3 episodes if one was so moved. At some other point, I even taped and logged all 117 episodes. I also got a hold of a series episode list and some Brady Bunch scripts and a few publicity glossies of the show from one of the old Hollywood Collectors bookstores. In fact, I think it was called Cinema Collectors, located on Wilcox Avenue in Hollywood. The show harkened me back to my childhood from when my house was in the Hollywood Hills. I used to watch it along with the Partridge Family on Friday nights, I think it was. I used to look forward to sitting with my parents each week to see what was up with the Brady household, since we didn't have a lot of drama in our own household. In 1975, with the series now completed, my family moved from the hills above Mulholland down to Studio City, where the new neighborhood really smacked of the life that the Bradys led, and for a good reason, which I'll explain in a little bit. In 1986, I was also coming off of the great personal satisfaction of having found my full-blooded sister after a 6-month search for her, a sister I had until then never met. So with that search having ended and having gained some confidence in being able to find people and things while I was still in the mood to find those things, I set out to locate the Brady Bunch house. A strange life segue, I realized, but I always tended to keep myself busy with personal projects. The other attraction of the show, which I think most people felt in the early 70s, is that I really loved the Brady Bunch as a sort of model family. The combination of Sherwood Schwartz's feel for humor in the show, mixed with undoubtedly Robert Reed's continual push for having ethical lessons taught, made the whole thing both fun and realistic to me. I know I'm not alone in this feeling, because other people's reactions to the show are similar, even years after it was off the air. Well, has it ever really been off the air? But as I alluded to, I felt that I had an extra connection with the show because of where I lived from 1975 onwards. There is an area of the San Fernando Valley just north of Los Angeles, just south of Ventura Boulevard, between Coldwater and Corbin Avenues, which comprises a slice of Studio City, all of Sherman Oaks, Encino, and most of Tarzana, that has various sorts of California-styled houses that are on flat, often rural-looking streets leading up to the Santa Monica Mountains. This strip of neighborhoods feels just like the place in which the Brady Bunch house should lie. There were several episodes where the Brady kids rode their bikes, knocked on doors, jogged in and around streets that looked like the areas around my house. There was also the fact that the show had used my school, Dixie Canyon Elementary, in one of the episodes as a scene-setting shot. So I was convinced that I could, with some effort, locate the Brady Bunch house. And let me say in full appreciation that I know that every person watching the show around the country felt that the family could have been in their neighborhood. I totally understand that. But I really felt in my heart that the house had to be in my local hood somewhere. While at USC, I had a good friend I grew up with who was now attending UCLA. He also felt a certain kinship with the show through similar childhood experiences. We used to appreciate the opening and ending titles of the show, along with Frank Duvall's scoring of the episodes. You know, the music that was supposed to sound like rock or popular music, but was really arranged and orchestrated by a composer who was from another era. If you get a chance, listen to when Alice's cousin takes over and the family has to do all those chores. The scoring in that episode is the quintessential Frank Duvall touch that has made the music so great and laughable at the same time. Therefore, with my friend's equal appreciation of the show and its various campy qualities, I had an accomplice in this mission of finding the house. So we drove around a little bit, trying to use the topography of the hills behind the house in the show as a reference point of some kind. The Brady house looked like it was on a street nestled in front of one of the hillside shoulders. I always imagine, from looking at how the sun hit the house on the crane shots of the show, that it was a north-south running street with the front of the house facing west. That would mean that the hills behind it were one of the many extensions of the Santa Monica Mountains that extended northwards towards Ventura Boulevard, creating an open, flat land on which several flat streets could be laid on. One of the various other visual references I used for the show were of the street signs, that is, the color and the shape, since the street names were difficult, if not impossible, to make out on pretty high-definition sets. There were definitely City of Los Angeles street signs, which are navy blue and shaped like a long flag with a tapered bottom. Another reference was the model type of the street lights on the streets around the house. They were made of concrete pillars with large upside-down pear-shaped bulbs and a horizontal octagon design in the neck of the street post. Very classic Los Angeles looking street lamps. I realized by looking around Los Angeles that these street lights and posts were used in older sections of Los Angeles, including most of Sherman Oaks, Studio City, North Hollywood, Los Feliz, Silver Lake, Echo Park, and Hancock Park. It didn't narrow down my search much, but it did tell me if I strayed too far out of the older San Fernando areas and into slightly newer developments. I ended up driving around more than my friend on my off time, and I kid you not, I logged about 80 miles driving the neighborhoods and hills south of Ventura Boulevard, starting from Coldwater Canyon all the way to Corbin in Tarzana. I did this driving over several weeks, but I just could not find the house, and it stumped me. I decided that it was time to ask somebody who might have specific knowledge of where the house was, and through the Hollywood Creative Directory, which was an entertainment business reference book of sorts, I wrote Florence Henderson through her manager, who was listed in the source book. A couple of weeks later, I received a greeting card size envelope in the mail. I opened it and I saw that it was a stationary note card with Florence Henderson's header on it, and in handwriting, all it said on the card was Sherman Oaks. It kind of made me laugh. I think that she had done that to reduce any liability of sending out information about the show's details or whatever, and while I appreciated her having sent it to me, it wasn't of much help. But at the same time, it was a verification for me of where I thought the house had been all along, so I kept looking, driving around any nooks and crannies that I thought I had missed on my off time. I must have been doing this for a couple of months by now when I had the idea of going into a realty company. There was a brokerage on Ventura Boulevard in Dixie Canyon just by my house and just up from the elementary that I had gone to that I mentioned earlier. I went inside and asked the guy, hey, do you know by any chance where they shot the exteriors of the Brady Bunch house? He said he didn't, but that he thought there was an agent in the office who might know. After waiting just a minute or two in the reception area, a young woman entered and greeted me. After asking her the same question, she said, oh yeah, I know it well. It's on my street that I live on. After a target-fixated pause, I said, are you serious? And I thought to myself, this is either going to be a cruel joke on me or I'm about to be very happy. She wrote down the address on a piece of paper and handed it to me, and I looked at it somewhat surprised, not recognizing the street name at all. I went to my car, pulled out my Thomas Guide, and I looked on a map of where the street Dilling was located. It ran along the very southeastern corner of North Hollywood. Furthermore, the house, if this woman was correct, sat north of Ventura Boulevard and north of the Los Angeles River, and it was 2.25 miles away from the most eastern portion of the perimeter in which I had been searching. My gut had been off on the whole thing simply because I would never have thought that given the apparent close proximity of the house to the hills on the show, that there could be a huge boulevard and a very wide Los Angeles River between the two. But okay, let's see, I said to myself, trying to contain my excitement. I jumped in the car, drove home and grabbed my video camera, and then headed to the address indicated on the piece of paper that she had given to me. Now, I just have to take a minute or two and describe my video camera that I had back then. This is a photo of the model here that you're looking at. I bought it for a few bucks from the Recycler newspaper from a guy who lived in the Mount Olympus area of Hollywood, just off of Laurel Canyon, and the whole assembly was huge. It was a tuner, a battery pack, recorder, charger, and the camera itself. The tuner, which is the unit at the bottom, would stay at home plugged into the cable TV system. But to videotape anything, I had to lug around the giant camera and the battery pack recorder. I wore an actual hiking-style backpack to carry the battery pack and recorder around in, even though the battery pack had a laughably uncomfortable handle for carrying attached to it, which you can see folded down on the top unit in the photo. I would walk around videotaping, feeling the burden of an astronaut wearing his heavy oxygen pack. What's more, the video plug that went from the camera into the battery pack, the VHS tape recorder, was missing a blue sensor pin when I got it from the guy who sold it to me. I was willing to live with it because it was at least something that I could record with for a pretty inexpensive price, but the result of the missing pin was that everything in the videos tended to turn out green or red depending on the time of day. Oh well, none of my other friends had a video camera at all. So anyways, I arrived at the house via a street that almost T-bones directly into the house called Clump Street. Of all the ways that I could have arrived at the address, 2 other ways to be exact, this was the perfect way for me to see the house for the first time because the hills were directly behind it, just like they were in the show, verifying its authenticity. And I just couldn't believe that after all that time of looking for the house, I was actually approaching it. I could see the A-frame, I could see the house extending to the right. It was just glorious, I tell you. I pulled my car over to the curb well before the intersection where the house sits and got my video camera out and hit record as I stumbled down the sidewalk towards the Brady Bunch house. The original sound on the videotape was very funny because I was absolutely ecstatic, and upon replaying it later, one could hear it distinctly on the video. I sounded manic and almost hyperventilating. This is the video that you are seeing right now. However, at some point after I made it, I dubbed the Grand Canyon mule scoring onto it because the apparatus allowed me to do it back then. I think that I was later a bit embarrassed by how excited I had sounded on the tape and just wanted to remove the sound, but too bad, I would get a hoot out of it nowadays. My friend wasn't home when I found it, but he would soon be at his house in the afternoon. I left a message for his parents and lay in wait. Then he got home and I calmly told him that I had something I wanted to run by him. He got to his house and hooked up his VHS recorder to his family television, and then I played him the videotape. He freaked out. He was like, "What? You found it? Where is it? I have to know." I took time to describe the house and how I found it and waited about 10 minutes to tell him the location, because it was fun to have that margin of time when I knew where the house was, but to him the house was still in some Shangri-La dreamland. It was really a hilarious few moments that transpired in there. I went back to the house a few days later and took some still photographs of me in front of the house, two of which you see here, where I'm sitting on the sidewalk in front of the house. What's nicely visible in the photos is how the walkway is designed with a kind of jig-jagged edge. The next time you see the crane shot from the show, you'll notice how the walkway has these features. I was using Fujifilm at the time, so these photographs are sort of green tinted, which was typical of the film at the time. Okay, here's the Brady Bunch house. This is the house that they used. And this is it today. This is 2015 in the month of July. And so I'll just show you a few shots here. To get back to the issue with regards to the location of the house, it took some getting used to for me, because as it turned out, it really wasn't in that band of neighborhoods that I'd expected to be in. It's in a fine family neighborhood, but while it's Sherman Oaksy in a visual sense, it's not in Sherman Oaks, south of Valley Vista Boulevard, where I thought it would be. And guess what? Florence Henderson had even been wrong. But that's what I mean. Even she, who probably had never needed to do an exterior shot there, also had the feeling that it was in Sherman Oaks. But there are other reasons for my assumptions. The wedding episode, which was the pilot episode in 1969, was shot at the house on the corner of Valley Vista and Long Ridge. When Mike and the boys pull up, they pull up right here. You can see that house is kind of like a diagonal, and a lot of the stuff that happens at the front door and all that was here, I believe. Because I think, you know, how much money do they have to do for a pilot? They probably just made the basic interior of the Brady house, and then from there they just shot on location. And that's also the house that Millicent answers the front door. This is the same house, I believe, where they used a scene setting shot for the house that Millicent lived in when Bobby kissed her and got the mumps. The backyard of the mumps episode was a studio shot, but if I recall correctly, the front of the house was used to show Millicent's neighborhood. And in the wedding episode, where Mike and the boys, along with Tiger hanging out of the car, are headed down the street, they literally pass in front of the house that I grew up in on Ethel Avenue, north of Long Ridge and south of Valley Vista. The funny story about this is that for years I hadn't seen this scene of all of them packed on the car, because in syndication packages of the episodes that the Los Angeles television stations played, as often happens, they removed some of the scenes to fit in more commercials. They do that with Seinfeld episodes all the time now. I went to the Beverly Hills Museum of Television and Radio, where I just happened to watch the full pilot episode while I was there. And I saw this scene and freaked out, recognizing that it was on my street. The two tall trees sat on my house's property and the property across the street from us. So it was funny in a way that I had been looking for the Brady Bunch house all the time, and it turned out that they shot a scene in the pilot right in front of my house. This is where, in that episode of the wedding that they're driving down the street, this is where it was, right here on Ethel. Long Ridge is up there, Valley Vista is behind me. The two trees you see in the when they're driving down, it was on our property, a big tree here. You can see the edge of my garage at the time, and actually in frame. And there's one really tall tree here, blew down in a storm, and that other one in the frame was on their property here, and that one they just removed at some point. Another funny happenstance is that during the years before I started Dixie Canyon Elementary, which was 5th grade for me, I'd gone to a private school in North Hollywood called Oakwood School. I attended there from kindergarten to 4th grade, so from 1970 to 74. See how easy it is for me to remember the grades I attended by the year? And guess where Oakwood School sat? On Moore Park Street at the north end of the neighborhood in which the Brady Bunch house sits. So for 5 of the 6 years that the Brady Bunch was on the air, I was attending Oakwood School, where just a few streets away from where I would play on the swings and sing the H.R. Pufnstuf and Lizville themes during my lunchtime. The Brady Bunch house sat in its suburban splendor. Kind of funny, I think. But in reality, the show did exterior shoots and pickups all over the city, including areas of Hancock Park, Hollywood, not just Sherman Oaks. There's a great website that shows where the shots were done, which I will put as a link below. And there's also a great Brady Bunch blog that I will include there as well. Oakwood was a school full of future stars and children of stars. I went to school with Bridget Fonda, Jennifer Jason Leigh, one of the Redgrave children for a semester. There was Noah Blake, son of Robert Blake, Devin Lesser, who was Jacqueline Scott's son. She was an actress on Bonanza, Gunsmoke, and Steven Spielberg's Duel. There was the daughter of Claudette Nivens, and among several more there was my classmate Jenny Berry. Her father was Ken Berry, and her mother's Jackie Joseph. Both Ken and Jackie were in an episode of the Brady Bunch with the three neighborhood boys who were adopted. Ken played the adopting father, and Jackie played the adoption social worker. An interesting aspect about the shooting of the house for the exterior shots was that to make the house look like it could be a two-story house, which is definitely not, by the way, it's just a split-level house. They hung a window frame under the A-frame on the left side of the house, and they also covered the first set of windows to the right of the front door with a mat. I think they did the latter thing because on the Paramount Studios set of the house, there was no visible window where the front door was and where the bottom of the stairs pointed to. At the same time, the driveway and the garage, which is deep inside the property, and the location of the backyard matches pretty well to the studio backyard. The only real difference externally was that the real house on Dilling Street's rear property line is actually set at a diagonal as a result of being pressed up against the contour of the LA River, which is moving at an east-northeast angle. So it is not a perfectly rectangular lot as a result. But they scouted the house pretty well for what would work for the show. If you are interested, get a hold of a book called TV Sets by Mark Bennett. It's a real cool book in which he drew the blueprints of a bunch of 1950s and 1960s television show interiors, of which Brady Bunch house is one of them. It's fun to see how they match your mind's eye. For instance, where Mike's architect studio is in the house, or where Alice's room is in the house, or the kids' bedrooms and bathrooms are. You should really check out the book. Another cool thing that happened to me was during my last year at USC, my friend Teresa, who was in the film program, started interning at Paramount Studios. My Brady Bunch friend and I were also big Family Ties and Gary David Goldberg fans, so Teresa offered to get me in to see the show, VIP wristbands and all. So we did. Sit, Ubu, sit. Good dog. We showed up at Paramount Studios maybe an hour and a half early before the taping and then proceeded to explore the lot. We happened upon the Very Brady Christmas soundstage, which happened to be open. Everyone is at lunch, or maybe it was a shooting day off or something, so we walked into the living room of the Brady set. They had constructed the living room, the kitchen, and the backyard and patio of the soundstage. I remember being perplexed as to how I had miscalculated in my mind the angle of the sliding glass doors of the kitchen to the patio and the driveway area, correctly re-reckoning it once I had been actually there. It was amazing. Still, not a person was in the soundstage near us, so I went over to the living room stairs and ran up and down them, and my friend followed suit. We just had to. It was one of those moments in life that one knows will never happen again, no matter even if we had been caught and yelled at. I mean, how lucky were we that in 1988 they reconstructed the house of the Paramount Studios for us to play in. Here you can see another photo of me standing in front of the Dilling Street house. This was in 1997, and by then you can see the owners had added a fence in front of the house because through the years so many people had come by to see the house, then walked up onto their property to see if the interior matched the studio set. I'm sure some of those people didn't even realize that the house was only used for exteriors. The house still has that fence today. I ended up meeting all the cast members at one time or another. I will start chronologically. The first cast member I met was Susan Olsen. My friend and I had read that she had been helping her boyfriend's business of designing and selling decorative sneakers. We found out where the location was, bought all of our Brady Bunch albums, and then knocked on the warehouse door. Her boyfriend answered and then called for her. Susan came to the door and was surprised and delighted that we had all of these albums some 18 years after their publication, and then proceeded to sign all of them. She was very sweet. We then found out that Robert Reed and Florence Henderson were doing a play in Orange County, the name of which escapes me. But after the performance, both Mr. Reed and Mrs. Henderson made themselves available to the audience members who remained, and my friend and I got to meet them and shake their hands. So I'm so glad that I went down there because it was the only time that I got to meet Mr. Reed before his death. I later, probably in about year 2000, went to a book signing of Growing Up Brady and met Barry Williams. This was a lot of fun, and Mr. Williams was very friendly and easy to talk to. The last thing, which is the biggest thing for me, occurred in 2003. I was working at the Walt Disney Feature Animation division of the company late one night, as I was wont to do most evenings, when I got an email from our brethren that Disney had just purchased the ABC network. They had also just built a huge building next to the Feature Animation building. We were all employees getting warmed up to each other. The email that was sent out was from their promotions department and was sent company-wide. It said something like, "We have about 100 tickets left over for an upcoming ABC 50th anniversary gala, which will be held at Hollywood's Pandages Theater on such and such a date and time. Anyone who is interested, please respond as soon as possible, as we will only give out the number of remaining tickets." For once, it paid off that I was working late regularly, while seemingly everyone else went home. I thought that the event sounded interesting, so I responded that I wanted 2 tickets so that I'd take my girlfriend. We went dressed up very nicely, and we had a lot of fun. There were appearances by the Happy Days cast, Laverne Shirley, Welcome Back Kotter. I was so excited to see Gabe Kaplan and John Travolta standing with the rest of the cast members on the same stage, and a ton of others which you can find on imdb.com. I'll put the link below. One of the ABC shows being celebrated was The Brady Bunch. They were all there with the exception of Robert Reed, of course. What I didn't realize would occur was that after the show was completed taping, they had drinks and hors d'oeuvres in the lobby. My girlfriend Brenda and I went out into the lobby and got some refreshments. The first very surprising thing that happened to us was that Katherine Hellman walked over to Brenda and I, said hello, and then complimented Brenda's dress that she'd picked out for the occasion. We were both almost speechless that someone of her stature would come over and talk to both of us. But then I got it together and we 3 exchanged niceties for a short time. Then members of the Brady Bunch started filing into the lobby. I was feeling a level of lightheadedness second only to the first time that I met John Entwistle of The Who, which was huge for me. First, Florence Henderson and her husband came out. As they passed by, I said hello to them, and Miss Henderson stopped and said hello to Brenda and I. Then, next, Ann B. Davis came out and we met her. Then we met Susan Olsen and then Eve Plum, who for a while didn't do a lot of Brady Bunch reunion-related activities, so I was really grateful to meet Miss Plum. Then Barry Williams and Mike Lookinline came out and we met them. Then the most amazing set of things happened. Chris Knight walked out in the lobby, got a drink, and stood in the lobby near the front doors. That wasn't the amazing part. The amazing part is that I felt comfortable enough, possibly because I was dressed to the nines, to stroll over to him and start a conversation with Brenda following me. I said hello and told him that I enjoyed the show. He was very friendly and said that he was glad to see everybody after all the years gone by. I told him that I had heard that he lived in Hermosa Beach or Manhattan Beach and that he was running a business down there. My common thing with him is that I ran a lot in those areas for exercise. He seemed happy that I knew the details about him, and we had a nice discussion, and he was very easy to talk to. Okay, the second amazing thing that happened, while Mr. Knight and I and Brenda were talking, his attention seemed to be distracted for a moment. I realized that he was looking at someone just beyond us who he knew and was walking up to him. I turned and saw there was Maureen McCormick. I just have to preface here that it's not like I ever was gaga over Maureen McCormick. As much as I enjoyed the show, I didn't watch the Brady Bunch when I was a child imagining any of them as my girlfriend or anything. But I will just tell you that Miss McCormick was so spectacularly beautiful walking up to us that, again, I was speechless. I think that it was a combination of being surprised that she was coming up to her little group and that she was just glowing, is all I can say. Apparently there was an outdoor party across the street from the Pantages after these drinks and hobnobbing would be done, which Brenda and I unfortunately didn't have a pass to. And Maureen simply wanted to know if Chris knew what time that was all starting. But man alive, she was so pretty. This was one of those moments of clarity that I recall having while she and Chris Knight were speaking to each other, that I suddenly understood just how beautiful a celebrity can be when he or she is really put together for a show. It would be akin to seeing John Travolta or Brad Pitt in a sharp tuxedo. And again, I had just seen John Travolta in a tuxedo that evening, so I know of what I speak. Chris, Maureen, Brenda, and I talked for a few more minutes, and then I think it was announced that the affair across the street would be starting soon. Everyone slowly began to move out of the Pantages doors and across Hollywood Boulevard for the after party. I thought about the idea that because I was invited to this celebration, some of the attendees, such as Katherine Hellman or Chris Knight or Maureen McCormick or any of the others that we talked to that night, might have thought that I was someone. I don't mean to belittle myself too much, given that I was a production supervisor at the Walt Disney Company, that I was either in a suit or tuxedo, I can't recall which, that I was with a beautiful lady at my side, and lastly that I'm a generally outgoing, friendly person. That any or all of those people we interacted with might have thought that I was some powerful executive, a producer, or maybe a director. I mean, how would they have known any differently? We were all essentially dressed in the same clothes. But in any event, the night ended with me having met every single member of the Brady Bunch, save Mr. Reed, who, again, I had luckily met a few years earlier. I mean, how thankful was I? The answer is very. Well, I hope that you enjoyed my long harangue about my finding the Brady house and also of my brushes with the cast. I think it's obvious that in the subtext of this whole thing these days, it's a lot easier to find information on the internet. I obviously had to put out great effort back in the day to find the house, but in doing so, I learned a little about the old neighborhoods of Los Angeles as I was referencing what I knew from the show and of the San Fernando Valley. It's nice for me to occasionally catch an episode of the Brady Bunch on cable here and there because it not only reminds me of my younger childhood, but also of a circle that was completed between the time I was at USC and working for a Walt Disney Company, during which I was able to find the house, meet the cast members, and validate that pretty much everyone and everything about the show was made of good stuff. How could they not be? It was, after all, the Brady Bunch. And that's the way I tracked down the Brady house.